I mean, it's one banana, Michael. How much could it be worth? $150,000? In 2019, artist Maurizio Catalan attached a banana with duct tape to the wall at Art Basel Miami, one of the largest annual art fairs. Within the first couple hours of the art fair opening, he sold the first banana for $125,000 and sold 2 more editions quickly after for $150,000 each. This broke out of the art world and became mainstream news as people were appalled at the idea that somebody would spend 3 to 4 times the annual American income on a piece of fruit and a couple inches of duct tape. However, with the purchase of this regular old banana and piece of duct tape on the wall came a certificate of authenticity declaring that the owner had purchased an original copy of the artwork. The banana and the duct tape could be replaced because they were just a normal banana and duct tape. So the value didn't lie in the artwork. It lied within the certificate of authenticity. Now imagine that physical banana is a clip art image of a banana. And in order to print that certificate of authenticity, you had to burn down the rainforests. And then somebody used that clip art image of a banana to buy cocaine. Well, that's NFTs. Howdy, friends and foes. My name is Kat. I'm an artist, teacher, and I was once on an episode of Zoom in the early 2000s. And you were watching Artists Beware, my video series where I talk about all of the shady things going on in the art world. Today we are talking about NFTs, so get your typing fingers ready and prepare to yell at me. NFTs are a very contentious, hot topic in the art world right now, and have been for the last couple months, with artists like myself speaking out against them publicly on social media, with maybe not the most positive response from definitely not bots. NFTs are the newest flavor of everything I hate about the art world. And in my opinion, they aren't anything more than the newest iteration of a banana duct taped to the wall. In fact, I would argue that both of these things are products of the same broken system. However, before we get into all of that, we first need to set a common ground of what NFTs actually are. Part 1. Defining NFTs. NFT is an acronym that stands for non-fungible token. So non-fungible. Non-fungible means that something does not have a consistently defined value, like something that's a currency or gold. And non-fungible is serving as an adjective in this acronym describing a certain type of token. You can think about these tokens like a certificate of authenticity, one that you can put on a digital asset. And for this example, we're just gonna talk about digital art. So that's gonna be our digital asset, is a piece of digital art. When this digital art has this token, it declares that it is the original version of that token and therefore has monetary value. That digital art could be copied and shared and saved across the internet, but if it does not have that token declaring it the certified original, it does not contain that value. So for the purpose of artists, NFTs are a way of buying and selling digital art as if it were a physical original. A comparable analogy would be if somebody went online and bought a cheap print of the Mona Lisa and hung it on their wall. We would understand that even though it might look exactly like the Mona Lisa hanging in the Louvre, it is not the original, it is just a copy and does not have that provenance that the original painting does and therefore does not have the same value that the original painting does. These tokens that give NFTs their value are minted or created on the blockchain through marketplace platforms where you can buy and sell NFTs, and that is one of the services that they provide. The reason why minting on the blockchain is important is because it is information that is shared through a network of computers. So it's not just owned by one singular person or one company. So it is publicly verifiable through a network of computers. This is obviously like a really generalized version of this, and it's a lot more complicated, but for the purposes of this video, that is how we are describing the blockchain and how NFTs interact with the blockchain. The side effects of minting NFTs on the blockchain, however, are sort of an environmental disaster and is one of the biggest arguments against NFTs becoming mainstream. So now that we have like a baseline for what NFTs are exactly, you might be thinking to yourself, like I did, couldn't I just download a copy or view a copy of an NFT online, and outside of the purposes of making money from it, I would have the same exact experience as the owner of the NFT because it's all purely digital? And yeah, you would be right. In order to talk about how we got here to NFTs being so popular and being worth so much money, we first need to talk about how we value art. So indulge me for a second. And we're gonna loop back around, okay? Part 2, valuing art. So how do we value art? Valuing art is challenging because in some ways it's very different than other goods and services. It's so much more subjective, and so are the skills that go into it sometimes. There's only so much interpretation into the way that an electrician can install a socket into your wall. They've either done the job correctly or they haven't. Art isn't quite like that. And even in other creative fields like architecture or fashion design, there's still a function to the form that they are creating. But in 2021, art doesn't necessarily have to comply to any sort of function or particularly a form. It could just be a regular old banana duct taped to the wall. So how do we value it? Well, I think for the average person, including myself, one of the ways that we value art is through its personal enrichment. There's also cultural and societal value that art can have if it has made an impact on the way that we experience or think about or remember culture. But the other way that we value art is monetarily. In the most simplest terms, the monetary value of art is what somebody is willing to pay for it. It's not necessarily made from how much it cost to make the art, or how long it took to make the art, or the skill required to make the art. But on its face, I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. If monetary value is in tandem with personal and cultural value, it makes it easier for artists to support themselves and continue to create the art that we are enriched from. When the average person is looking to own a piece of art, they wage the monetary value versus the personal enrichment they will get from owning the artwork. The problem is when we build a system around only the monetary value of art and we ignore everything else about it, which is unfortunately how a lot of the high art market functions. This is how you get banana being duct taped to the wall costing $150,000. Is anybody enjoying this? No. Is anyone getting $150,000 of personal enrichment from a banana? No, and I think that is why it angered so many people, right? Because we couldn't comprehend spending that much money and getting that much value out of a piece of artwork that is simply just a banana. I think the way that the high art market is operating translates to the way that NFTs are set up. I think that owning an NFT inherently only has monetary value, and it has no personal or societal or cultural enrichment because you have the same exact experience whether or not you own the NFT. This sounds really harsh and possibly unfair, but if you think about it, why else would people be spending millions of dollars on owning NFTs. And in order to explain that, I need to talk about the art world and its serious infection. Part 3, the infection. So this might come as a shock to all of you, but we live in a society. And by society, I mean late capitalism and impending world doom. The infiltration of capitalism into the art market has wildly distorted the way that we experience and even the way that we make artwork. Auction houses have sold artworks by living artists for tens of millions of dollars, like a sculpture of a balloon rabbit that's actually made of metal by Jeff Koons, or a bunch of dots painted on a canvas by Damien Hirst. And most recently, Christie's, probably one of the most renowned auction houses in the world, has sold its first NFT by Beeple for $69 million. Do these artworks, both physical and NFTs, have tens of millions of dollars of value? No. It is a stupid rabbit made from metal. Expensive art purchases at the upper echelon of the art world are not being treated as an ownership of artwork that has value to the owner or even society, but rather an investment into a market akin to stocks. These collectors are filthy rich, and they are making investments on assets they hope will receive a financial return or will at least hold their value over time. And you might think this is a very cynical way of looking at how the art market operates. But unfortunately, this is as clean as it gets. Money laundering and tax evasion is rampant in the art world. I don't want to go too deep into the complexities of the loopholes in the way that rich people are extorting artwork for very shady practices and their own personal gain, because I think that's like its own video, right? Like that, it is so complex and there's so much to it. But I do want to provide an example of a very basic way that the art world is set up to basically let money laundering flourish. Let's say that you have $150 in very dirty cash. It is filthy, disgusting. You don't want to make a trackable purchase or put it into your bank account that has records of the money that you're depositing and taking out. So you go to an auction house and buy an artwork with that $150,000. That auction house isn't required to disclose who buys and sells the artwork at the auction house or for how much. They aren't required to report it to any government agency. So now that you have $150,000 in assets, the artwork, you can turn around and sell that to somebody for the same value or possibly even more. And you've walked away with the same amount of money, but now it's clean because you've gone through all of these systems to cover up your tracks on transferring this money around. And when this plays out between international parties, you get offshore art warehouses or free ports. Billions of dollars of artwork remains in these giant warehouses just outside of airports across the entire world. And the reason why artwork remains there is because when it is in these no man lands, when it's there, the buyer and sellers aren't required to pay taxes on those transactions that they would if it was part of any particular country like the United States. It remains in crates behind locked doors in these warehouses, possibly to never be seen again by the public. So much for personal and cultural value. The art market is notoriously unregulated, but interestingly, in December of 2020, Congress passed new legislation that would crack down on the money laundering in the physical art world. The Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2020 will go into effect at the end of 2021. And the goal of this act is to create much more transparency in the sales of artworks, especially at auction houses. Here's a quote. Anyone participating in the art market will likely see a renewed commitment to thorough due diligence and documentation as a matter of business practice. Many art dealers and collectors have long operated using informal business practices. Deals done through a handshake and a one-page bare-bones invoice, or arrangements made verbally through layers of go-betweens. But where the market is likely to see an uptick in law enforcement actions and investigations, the industry overall likely will need to respond to enhanced scrutiny with increased professionalism and accountability. I mean, this is great, right? Like, there should be more regulation in the art world. But what if there was a new way to buy and sell artwork using a decentralized currency that is relatively untraceable? And more importantly, this new art market is completely unregulated and most likely won't be regulated in the next year. And you don't even have to go through the hassle of storing that pesky artwork in offshore art warehouses because it's all purely digital. Wouldn't it be really convenient for that market to take off and gain notoriety and popularity at the same time that these regulations are taking effect on the physical art world? I don't want to go full conspiracy theory and say NFTs are a result of the crackdowns in money laundering in the art world, because that's not entirely true. NFTs existed before these regulations were ever proposed. But I just think it's really interesting that this market is booming and hundreds of millions of dollars are being dumped into it at the same exact time that these regulations are being proposed and will soon go into effect. And let me also say that I don't think that everybody who is buying and selling and making NFTs are looking to evade taxes or do money laundering. I don't think that's the case for most people invested in this market. The numbers are too small to make it worth people's while, except for the very rich, who are the ones probably doing it. Currently, none of the major NFT platforms have any screenings for fighting financial terrorism and anti-money laundering. So people can stay purely anonymous when buying and selling NFTs. That's very appealing to a certain type of person. Let's stop talking about money laundering for a second, okay? And let's talk about the claims that NFT supporters are making online. Part 4, the claims. One of the most prominent claims that I see all over the internet and that I've gotten in my replies, and I've seen in articles, is that NFTs are radically changing the art world. This is obviously a very subjective claim, right? And it's too early to be able to tell exactly how NFTs are going to change the art world in the long run. Whether or not this is a fad that's going to go away and is just sort of a blip on the screen, or if this does have staying power. It's just too early to tell. But the way that I've thought about it is that NFTs aren't really a new medium or a new way of making art or a new subject matter or style. It's simply just a new way to buy and sell digital art. So when you remove the idea of making money, it hasn't advanced the way that we really make art in any way. And if NFTs are radically changing the art world, I can't seem to find a really great reason that it's changing it for the better. I mean, just a couple weeks ago, somebody attempted to sell an NFT copy of an original drawing by the late John Michael Basquiat, and was going to allow whoever purchased the NFT the ability to destroy the original drawing if they would like to. The estate of John Michael Basquiat had to step in order to stop the sale. The estate of John Michael Basquiat owns the copyright in the artwork reference, said the estate representative David Stark. no license or rights were conveyed to the seller, and the NFT has subsequently been removed from sale. I don't even think I need to explain all of the ways that this is messed up, but like, Jesus Christ, it is, wow, there's just so many layers to it. How scummy. Anyway, next claim. NFTs give artists the opportunity to support themselves. Yes, some people are making money and are supporting themselves from NFTs. That is true. There is multiple people. I understand this. However, some early data analysis suggests that if you are not an established artist and you are a newcomer to this market, the chances are you are not going to be making a lot of money, or you could be potentially losing money by trying to sell NFTs. Kimberly Parker, who's also a really great artist, did some early data analysis on the sales of NFTs across different marketplaces back in March. This info doesn't look at all of the NFTs being sold over all time on every single platform. It does have a sample size of a couple tens of thousands of NFTs. So I feel like it's a pretty large sample and a pretty decent look at some of the statistics behind NFTs that are being sold. Parker found that half of the NFTs being sold, not half of the NFTs that are for sale, this does not include all of the NFTs, but only the ones that were sold, are being sold for under the equivalent of $200, with over 34% being sold for under $100. And you could argue $200 or even $100 is a lot of money to a struggling artist, and some money is better than no money at all that they maybe wouldn't have made if they didn't make NFTs. But the problem is that when NFTs are sold at this price point, chances are you are really not making that much money, or you could be possibly losing money. The reason why is because there are so many fees that go into actually putting an NFT up for auction. Marketplace platforms have what are called gas fees, which are essentially the fee that you front the bill of in order to pay for the energy costs to mint the NFT on that platform, right? Because it uses a lot of energy and the platform doesn't want to eat that cost, so they make the person minting the NFT pay for it. This fee is partially dictated by traffic on the platform at any given time. So the more demand that there is to mint something on the blockchain, the more expensive that gas fee is going to be. These gas fees can get really expensive, and there are additional fees, like there are claim fees, there are fees that the marketplace can take, there are listing fees. That also doesn't include the cost to then exchange that cryptocurrency in your wallet to a usable currency like USD. If you sell an NFT for $100, with all fees considered, you would lose between 75 and 154% of your profit, which is on average 100.5%, meaning you would lose 50 cents. And if you sell an NFT for $200, on average, you will lose 54% of your profit. And this doesn't even take into account the fact that when you sell an NFT that you've made, you have to pay income tax on that profit. Even more so if you bought an NFT and flipped it for profit, and if you only owned it for a couple of months, that is subject to short-term capital gains tax. And if anyone has had to pay short-term capital gains tax, they know that it can be a pretty big percentage. So while yes, there is the possibility that you could make a lot of money making NFTs or flipping NFTs, the likelihood is that if you're not fetching very large numbers, which seems to be happening mostly to already established artists with fans and collectors, you aren't going to see a substantial return. And while I'm not saying that NFTs are a pyramid scheme, because the people at the top are making a lot of money in trying to convince all the people underneath them that they should do the same thing and that they could make a lot of money. And in reality, those people are either not making very much or losing money. That is exactly what I am saying. There are just so many platforms that already exist that are helping artists actually support themselves. And like, yeah, it does suck that a lot of people have to rely on these third-party platforms and they're like kind of subject to whatever that third-party platform wants to do. The freedom and the stability is actually genuinely helpful to many artists. Next claim, NFTs remove the middleman of art galleries that take a huge cut from artist profits. So another thing I see often is talking about how messed up the traditional art world is and how it's extremely gated, and commercial galleries take anywhere from 30 to 50% of artists' profits and are just running away with all of this money from artists, and NFTs are the solution. I've already gone over my disdain for the traditional art world, but the reality is that most artists are not selling artwork through traditional galleries anymore. Many illustrators, or even painters, ceramicists, or craftspeople are making money through private sales, through their social media, selling merch, or they're going to conventions or makers fairs and tabling there to sell whatever they've made. Or we have Patreons for people that enjoy our artwork and want to support us. Even I don't make most of my money from selling artwork in galleries. And I'm not supporting the way that commercial art galleries all operate, because I think there are a lot of problems with many, many commercial galleries that I plan on going into in a future video. My disdain for NFTs is not a support for the traditional art world. I want to make it clear. And another thing people don't consider is that a lot of these curated NFT platforms actually do take a cut, and it's not as big as commercial galleries, but it can be 15% is an amount that I've seen across a couple different platforms. And then there's all of these other kind of hidden fees that go along with it. So at least with commercial galleries, you know how much they're taking, and it doesn't matter how much the artwork is being sold for, it's the same percentage at every price point. Whereas with NFTs, like if you're selling it at a lower price point, which most people are, you could have so much more of that profit being taken out than you would if you sold it through a commercial gallery. So who is making these claims? I think it's important to look at not only the claims themselves, but who is making them, right? And why they might be making them. One of the very vocal supporters of NFTs are the Winklevoss twins. They love to talk about how awesome and how great NFTs are and how much great work it's doing for so many artists. They also love to get extremely owned on Twitter. I personally love the interactions that I've had with Cameron Winklevoss on Twitter. Let me pull it up because it's just too funny, and I need to share it. I need to share this very beautiful interaction I had. Cameron Winklevoss tweeted on March 21st, "NFTs liberate art. Traditional art is confined to time and space. You have to be in the right city, go to a museum, be invited to someone's house, etc. Anyone, anywhere with an internet connection can view NFTs and take them in. This is a huge breakthrough." I replied and said, "Damn, if only there was a way to view art digitally." And then he replied, "If it was really that simple and compelling to view traditional art online, then why exactly do we have museums?" He thought he really got me, but I simply just reminded him, museums existed before the internet, Cameron. The rewards of being a teacher extend far beyond the classroom. So why do the Winklevosses love NFTs? Well, they own an NFT platform, of course. And remember how I said this thing is totally, definitely not a pyramid scheme? I swear, anybody that has said positive things about NFTs either is like weirdly obsessed with them and trying to hawk them off onto people, or they own NFT platforms, or they're making NFTs and trying to sell them to their fans, or like they have some amount of monetary stake in it. They have skin in the game. I mean, look at Mark Cuban, Jack Dorsey, Grimes, Jeffree Star. All of these people are coming out with NFTs or are selling them or are trying to have some sort of investment. They don't care about the average artist. They're millionaires and billionaires. They don't care about you. They care about lining their pocket. That's how they got there. Part 5. The environment. You've probably been waiting for me to talk about the environmental impacts of NFTs this whole time, because that is one of the major criticisms against it, like I said at the top of the video. So most NFT platforms use a cryptocurrency called Ethereum to mint or create the NFT on the blockchain. They're using Ethereum's blockchain. This is done by mining, which is essentially having computers complete complex puzzles in order to encrypt these transactions. The process of mining requires an insane amount of energy from these computers. Massive mining warehouses all over the world, the size of airplane hangars, are just filled with these computers mining cryptocurrency 24/7, because there's a lot of money to be made. And most of the energy being used to mine these cryptocurrencies is coming from fossil fuels. It is estimated that the collective energy used to mine Ethereum every year is equivalent to the amount of energy used by the entire country of Ireland. And Bitcoin, the most popular, that's equivalent to the amount of energy that Argentina uses every year. But here's the thing, NFTs would still be bad even if they weren't destroying the environment, for all of the reasons that I spent most of this video going over. Framing the discussion of why NFTs are bad solely around the environmental impacts is a shifting goalpost and doesn't get to the root of at least why I think that they're terrible. They're another reason why they're terrible, but like if they solved it tomorrow that, you know, NFTs were green, I would still not be in support of it. Manufacturing digital scarcity on the internet for means of making rich people even richer and using the art world as sort of like a playground for investors is just gross to me, and not the direction that I think art should be moving in. And I don't think it's beneficial to art as like a grand concept and artists individually. Because when you value art purely on how much money it can make you, you end up with a banana being duct taped to the wall. And I hope our future contains much less bananas. Thank you for watching, and thank you to my awesome patrons for supporting me in all of my creative endeavors, including this new series. If you would like to become a patron, please head over to my Patreon where you can support me and, I don't know, buy me a dozen bananas. And thank you for all the love in the last video. I really wasn't expecting that many people to be interested in scam art schools, and I'm really glad that some people found that information and the research that I did very useful. That was definitely part of my goal. And I think part of the goal of this video is definitely to save some people from potentially losing money and maybe, I don't know, spreading the word of why NFTs are not really great for anybody except rich people. Please let me know what you think about NFTs in the comments down below, and let me know what you think I should cover in the next video. Until next time, do an art. And this video is going to be for sale as an NFT